Okay, this is the last talk. I will try to make it short. For me, it's a kind of summary of what we have been doing here. So we have shown what is available, but this is like a call to arms that it would be nice if more people would try to add things back to the community. And actually, there is quite some support to make it easier to do, and that's what I want to talk about. So, okay, Pharo is a platform, we all know that, and it was, the whole project was actually started to make it possible for all of us, for you, to be able to write your own applications and to be successful with it and to write like real-world applications. Of course, it's open source and it has an ecosystem and an active community, and we all like that. But it's necessary for anything serious that you're doing. You will always be loading this database driver or an XML parser or JSON or whatever. So everybody needs third-party libraries to solve all kinds of specific needs, so like talking actually just to the outside world, right? And maybe in some of the projects that you guys are doing, like we had this example about Synectic with their telescope project, like in every company you take some tools from everything that exists, and then maybe you have something missing and then you build it inside, and maybe at one point it becomes something that might be interesting for others. So what we ask is to consider giving back something to the community and to publish whatever you did, like your library or framework or component, as something open source, and to make everything better for everybody. So why would you do that? Well, the advantages are that you will get more users, and those users will test your application and you will get feedback. Maybe some people will just ask for features and you will have to help them and extend your product. Or if you're lucky, some people will contribute things. So overall, the result will be that the quality of the thing that you made will become better. Yeah? So it will raise the quality level. And it will become easier for yourself, for your company or your organization to actually maintain that component, so assuming it's an important component. There are also some disadvantages to publishing something. It will be more work, period. You will take on the responsibility, and for me an important aspect is that it will be a commitment for the future. You can't say, I will publish something today and then forget about it. No, it will take, you will really have to keep in mind that it will take years for you to make this into something successful, right? So you will have to decide for yourself, am I ready to keep on supporting this for a couple of years? And also it will require some marketing. If you don't do anything and you keep silent, nobody will use it, and it will be just a one-person project, and it will have, from your perspective, the open sourcing will have failed. Luckily, I think there are some things available that will make it easier to do this, right? So, of course, the first thing you have to do is to decide, what do I have? Do I want to publish it? How do I define it? What is the boundary of this project? Is it a driver? Is it an interface, a parser? Is it a protocol? Whatever. You will have to decide what will be my dependency when you publish something. So is it just Pharo, nothing else? Or do you need C-side? Do you need Bootstrap? Do you need Rosal? Whatever. So there will be some dependencies. You will have to think about that up front. And then, of course, there is the definition of source code. I won't go too deep into that, so you have to define your packages, which will come down to choosing names. You will have to find some kind of domain name prefix so that there will be no name conflicts. And you will have to keep in mind that it's completely possible to have extensions on existing objects. So this is just one example. NeoJSON, that's a package that I wrote. It has a core package and a test package, and then all the classes inside start with the same prefix. It's a long one in this case, NeoJSON, all of them. Most of the time it's just a letter or two. And as you can see, it's very easy with the basic Monticello concept to have methods on kernel classes that are just extensions. So don't be afraid to do that. It's perfectly possible. Many people have will also use a special selector name to make sure that it doesn't conflict with anything else. So that's Monticello. Once you define the package, you can look at it in isolation. You will have the snapshot. And the next thing, of course, is to decide where to put it. There are different options. You can use one of them, or you can use multiple. I often use two things. So I put them in small.hub, which is very nice. You can have one repository for multiple applications, or just one-on-one, or whatever. And you can do exactly the same thing on GitHub. So then you expose your code to as many people as possible. And then the next step, I think that if you want to publish something professionally, then you have to use Monticello. Why? Because it makes it possible to have this kind of experience. So you want to have one-click loading, or one expression loading, or one command loading. So this is the configuration browser that we all know in the image. So you will have, or should make it as simple as possible for your users to load something for themselves. So this is one solution. The other one is, okay, once you have the configuration, you can do it with one expression, which is also very cool. Or you can do it with the zero config stuff, and when you are building images, you can just refer to your configuration and it will load, right? When you do this, you will make it possible for others to reuse your configuration in their project, which is also very nice. So, okay, we can't go into detail, but Monticello solves a number of problems. It's a complicated piece of code. If you see it for the first time, it's not very easy to use. So there is a learning curve, but it solves dependency management, so it makes sure that everything that you need for your code will be loaded. It will solve version management, so you can have a stable version and a development version or bleeding edge version. You can number your versions, talk about them. And it will solve the problem that maybe in Pharo 3 you need to do this one, and in Pharo 4 you need to do this, so that solves that problem. Now, this is the API of Monticello. So you see, this is like another project that defines a number of dependencies, and you can just refer to them, their configurations, and then at the end you say, okay, and my application is depending on all these kinds of guys, and these are my groups, and that's more or less how it works. Maybe you wonder how you get your configuration inside this nice configuration browser in the image, and that's by copying your configuration to a certain place. If you move your configuration over there, people will find it for Pharo 3 or for Pharo 4. It's kind of a blessed repository for configurations, but we don't have any real checks, so you can do this yourself. Another thing that you absolutely have to do when you publish something is that you have to add tests. Now, it's called unit, but there are different kinds of tests. Of course, we have unit tests, but if you have a component, then you will probably have functional tests, just to see if it really parses XML and it results in this, or if it really produces this kind of code. So both are very important. And a thing that is also important and that I like to do when supporting something once it's out there, if somebody reports a bug, I try to write the unit test that covers the bug before I fix it, and then I fix the bug, and then I'm sure it's there, and the test keeps on being present in the package for the future. So why are tests so important? Because it's our way in Pharo to be able to make sure that the code stays complete, that it works, and that you have some reference about the quality. So it will make it possible for yourself to do refactoring. It will make it much more easier to port from one version to another, because you can say, okay, if all the tests runs, then okay, if there is any good coverage, it will be all right. And that's also very important, the last one, it makes it much easier for other people to contribute, because they will be less afraid to try something or to change something, and if they know that everything succeeds, then they will be inclined to submit some changes. And this is a quote from Marcus. So if there's no test for something, then you might as well say that it doesn't exist. Now, that's maybe a bit harsh, but on the other hand, when things go forward in the future, you forget about some API that you added. So actually, you should try to have coverage or at least a test for every public method that you have. Another kind of test that's very cool is if you're a bit of an experienced developer in Pharo, then one of the things that you will do when you see some method and you wonder, what is this? What does it do? You will ask for senders, right? And the idea is that one of the senders should be a test. And the test should be well written or clear enough or documented enough so that the test can be an example. And you should at least try to write a couple of tests along this idea that they are an example, like a live example that's tested all the time, validated all the time, and that is like documentation for the user. Now, inside the image, there are a number of tools that you can use to improve your quality. I have to add, where is it? URV as is even nicer tool on top of this with this VD browser. So there are code critic rules that you can run and that will look at your code and tell you whatever went wrong. So you really have to try this once or at least for yourself. It will give you warnings and errors and tell you that you do something strange or something that might be strange. Like in this case, it tells you that you have a cascade and it does not end with yourself and you still return the value. Maybe this is a mistake. In this case, it's not a mistake, but it could be. This is really valuable. We have no static typing, but this is something that covers a lot of ground. Also not something I'm going to go into detail about, but we have profilers and there are some limited coverage tools. You could consider using them to make sure that the thing that you wrote is a bit performant. Next, and this is really an important tool, we have a continuous integration system. It's a very nice one that's offered for free by INRIA. It's a service for the whole of INRIA, so it's a very big system, and it's used intensively both by all the projects internally, it's used by Pharo itself, and there is a whole section over there that we can use for third-party libraries. You have heard other people talk about it. Now, what does this thing do? It's a thing that allows you to have a controlled and independent build of whatever you did, right? So you know that it runs on your machine, but maybe in some other context or with some other version there is a problem, right? So you can try to test that manually once or twice, but what this thing does, it will do it again and again automatically for you in lots of different configurations. So it will do it in most cases once a day at least, or whenever you change something in your source code, you commit, and then it will notice that the repository has changed. It will do it when Pharo changes, it will do it when the VM changes. So this is really, really cool. Like I don't like Windows, but I know that sometimes this will then be tested on Windows, right? Or it could. It should like it.
You don't have to run Windows, and it will still be tested on Windows.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, what do you need to be able to plug in to the continuous integration server? That is, you need your configuration, right? That will make it a lot easier, and you have to have a repository that you refer to. Now, what you create with the CI is you have like a build matrix where you have different builds depending on different properties. It will run all your tests. That's why the tests are so important. If you have no tests, there is not much point in running the CI. It will notify you by email whenever something goes wrong. So you will have a nice email that says, okay, you broke the build or some build. And it will also produce something called build artifacts. So it will produce images that contain your code, right? Often, for more complex projects, it's difficult to, some people find it difficult to load your code, and then you can say, okay, go over there, there is an image, it works, it's tested, try that one, and then the guy receiving the advice knows that he has to look for himself for any trouble locally. So this is how it looks. The thing over there with the green dots, that's the build matrix. This project is built for Pharo 2, 3, and 4. And it's built once for the stable release and once for the development release, right? So if I make some changes that are experimental, it will only be done on the bleeding edge. And after a while, I know this is stable and tested in the wild, and then I can make it stable, and then it will be run again. At the left column here, you see all the builds, so you see one every day. There are a couple of red ones, but that's often the case when the CI infrastructure is having a hiccup, and then it fails, but then the next day it's good again. Then there are some graphs about tests. So if you have to ask for an account to be able to do this. You can give it on the mailing list. And then you have to describe or edit your configuration. This is based on a template. It's not very difficult. What you see in the box over there on the top, it's actually a shellcode that's running. And you see Pharo being downloaded, being invoked, your configuration being loaded, tests being run, whatever. And as Guichet explained, you can even do installs of various Linux packages if you would need, right? I haven't tried that yet. And at the bottom you can see which email address the notifications should be sent to notify you when something goes wrong.
And you never start from scratch, you always make a copy from something which looks like it might be similar to what you are doing.
Yeah.
So it's easy to do.
Yeah, there is also a template.
Yeah, it's based on a template, right? And it's pretty well documented. It's not easy, but it works. And this is what a build looks like. So this is the console output when one of the slaves takes your configuration and decides to build it, and then you can see Pharo being downloaded, the VM, blah, 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 and then it starts loading your configuration, running, and so on. If something goes wrong, and that will happen in the first time that you try this, you can go here to find out. Also very nice with this is it runs the tests, it tells you how long they take, blah, blah, blah. If something goes wrong, you have a stack trace immediately over here. Yeah? But you will also have a fueled out stack inside this system. And then, of course, if you go public with something, you will have to do effort. And it's like documentation, right? So, like the tests are very important and the source code management is important, it's also important to document it. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in the philosophy that well-written code does not need any documentation, it still does, right? So, but I firmly believe that it starts with this, right? You have to choose good class names, you have to think about your class names, you have to choose good method names, sensible selectors, follow some conventions, you have to have a good style of programming, not huge methods, blah, blah, blah. And it has to have a nice design that makes sense, right?
You put a ton of barriers against open source.
Next, so when the code is maybe ready to be published, you go over it and you write some class comments. Now, I like to write class comments because it's also a way for yourself to think about your class and how you would try to explain it. And if you do that even at the design stage, it will help you focus and understand what you're actually trying to do. If you cannot explain it to yourself, then there is already a problem, right? The same goes for method comments, especially the public API, it should all be documented. And then the most sensible type of comment, of course, is implementation comments that you say, okay, I'm doing this way because other people looking at the code will need this kind of comment to make sense of what you're doing. But of course, like in the Java world, when you say, okay, every method needs a comment, name, returning the name, instance variable, that should not be done. Returns the name. Yes?
Well, when I see a comment, I know that the author thought about should there be a comment here or not. When I see no comment, I don't know if there was any consideration given to the issue at all.
Yeah, but if it's really obvious, like print on, for example, you don't have to comment that, right? You inherit it and you override it.
And I've seen cases where things that almost everyone would consider completely obvious actually had some subtle thing.
Yeah, but
and the
that's,
method was tiny.
yeah, okay, but that's a different thing. If you if there is a danger that somebody might misinterpret it or whatever, then you should comment it, right?
Yeah, but how does a person reading know the difference if there's no comment?
Yeah.
They don't.
But I'm trying to lower the barrier a little bit.
It's too far.
Also, I think if you write a comment, you should try to rephrase the comment so that it's not literally the same as what it's in the method, because if you say the same thing that the selector reads, then it's really silly, right? So you should try to put yourself in the position of somebody looking at this from an external standpoint, not knowing their packaging, right? And it should be like a guide to new users. Like you can say in a setup, you can say, okay, there is also an accessor and vice versa, or you can say the default value will be this, blah blah. This is interesting. Now there is a relatively nice help system in the image that you can use. It's used, for example, for the Prof Steph tutorial that we have. There is even a tutorial on the tutorial, so you can use that one. But of course, the holy grail of documentation is something that's outside the image and that people can read. People like to read something, especially when they get started. So anything that's a paper or a tutorial or an article or even a set of slides, these are all important things that you should consider. You don't have to do all of them. One of them is enough, but there should be something that you can point users to and say, okay, start by reading. There was a talk about pillar. Pillar is one way to solve the problem of how do I write it and how do I produce whatever I want. Pillar can produce HTML, PDF, and Markdown, so it then covers almost everything. The nice thing is in Pharo, and you can play with it, you can use it inside the image. There is also a nice project called Pillar Hub, which is like a web service where you can publish your documents online. Now, Markdown, in my opinion, remains an option because both in GitHub and on Smalltalk Hub, the first page that you see, if you want to add some documentation over there, it's, in both cases it's Markdown, and I think that's very nice to have a project that at least explains in like 2 pages whatever it is, right, and to put some links in there. Also consider adding catalog information to your configuration, right? So Steph started an effort to add metadata to configuration on the class side. So if you override a number of, or write a number of methods over there, you can just say, okay, my title is this short description, some links, blah, blah, blah. And then there is a process that will collect all the configurations and will make little data cards.
We will come back to that. So we are planning something. I
Better.
hope that one day we will have something,
Yeah.
and then all the configuration should have, or all the package, because it is important that in the future we have a catalog, so that
Yeah.
when we are looking for something, we know that it is there. So
Yeah. This is a problem that we have to solve because like in the configuration browser in the image, you see all the configurations, but there is no explanation. So it's just a name, and we need to be able to show the people that it does X or it does Y. So then we have the thing that we tried with this PharoDAYS. This is a posters effort. I think that it would be nice if like everybody would produce like one page that explains this project. We will move them online. I saw many people taking pictures yesterday, but they will come online, all of them. And we hope to keep this like a permanent expo that we can run forward and maybe print them again next year, twice as many, 100 one. I don't know. Of course, Thierry, you have big posters and very expensive ones, but they're nice. You also have to be careful when Dolo starts. He will have billboards on the street and blah blah. No, but I've said to many people already, like it's really important to try to convince people about what you did. It shouldn't be something small and really hidden. And it takes years and years to talk about what you did again and again and again, and then this guy uses it and this guy. So, I like to use the mailing list for support. There's no point in starting your own mailing list, right? For something small. And that way, when you give support, I always ask people to ask questions publicly, because when I answer, the answer is recorded and it can be searched for, and it will help maybe other people in the future. You can use the Monticello packages as a way to ask for contributions. So if somebody makes a change, ask him to either write his version in your repo or send it by email, and then you can merge and compare. It's very nice. Or you can use the GitHub system with pull requests. Also works very nice. So remember that when you have things out there and something goes wrong and then they ask for help, there is the Pharo debug log, which contains the stack trace. There is also the mechanism of fueling out stacks, which are all helpful, or could be helpful when you don't understand the problem that people have. So the thing is, publish it, but then make sure that you support your software and engage your users. That's it. Any questions? Yes.
Have you seen, or I don't know, which is the status of WebDoc? There was a package from Camilo that actually exported the comments and the API of your package as JavaDoc.
Yeah. I know it. It used to be quite nice, but I'm not sure. I don't think it's still.
Yes, yes.
Is it still alive?
I keep it.
Yeah, it's working.
It's working. I have to cut some parts that I didn't understand.
Okay.
But it must be working.
But the question is, what I feel with that is, how is that better than what we have in the image, right? So because it's generated based on what's in the image, and we are used to work with browsers, so I already can see everything in the image. So why would it have to be external? Now, on the other hand, it becomes indexable by Google, but we have that when you go on GitHub as well, right? So if you browse a file tree repository on GitHub, you can see every comment, you can see the class comments, and they're referenceable as well, right?
It's useful for there are people who have to use the classes in configuration files and nothing about Pharo. They just write the files and they need to have a doc. So the web doc is good.
Also, I've seen students that actually the first thing they do is to Google search. They don't search in the image, so you have to teach them that.
You have to hit them.
Yeah,
all this Googling and copy pasting and they don't think.
They're working hard.
That was it. Yeah.
We have to go to it.
Okay. Thank you.